18 or 19, so I've got my job and I live with my mom and dad, so all my money goes towards video games and gas.
Yeah.
That's the list, baby.
That's right, man. That's right.
So Dark Souls is a game I probably, I can't say for certain, but I think I might have never played it if it wasn't for Talon. And then I went back and I played the crap out of Dark Souls.
Yeah.
And then Talon says play Demon Souls. And I had just as much fun playing Demon Souls as I did Dark Souls. Yeah. But the way they take the medieval fantasy and then put that dark gothic scene onto it is just amazing.
It's just perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty good.
Sounds
pretty good.
Ryan, what's your number 3?
Yeah. What's your number 3?
My number 3, I didn't.
All right, we're at 3. You have to memorize them.
Okay.
You're not allowed to look anymore.
This game
As I'm looking.
holds a huge, and it might even be my number 1. I'm not sure. It's such a special place for me. Breath of Fire, Dragon Quarter.
Man, I should have guessed this one.
I have another friend whose favorite game is that game.
Really?
Yeah.
And I grew up, my high school years were sitting in his bedroom watching him play that game and curse very loudly very often.
I don't think I ever cursed that game, man.
That's okay. Go ahead. Make sure it's the game I'm.
That is
thinking
my other strategy game on the list, and it's entirely different than Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, except that there's strategy and you play as a character. But it was the first game that had, that I remember having a story that I was like invested in. Loved the story. You play as like the apocalypse has happened. Everyone lives underground. And you're this kid named Ryu, which is pretty typical for any Breath of Fire game.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this falls in line. I think it's after like Breath of Fire 1, 2, and 3. So I think this might be the 4th in the series, and I could be wrong. And you have a best friend that I can't remember his name, but he is like, and your job, and you and your best friend's job is to basically explore the underground, I'm pretty sure, and fight monsters to make it safer. And your best friend is like this really high-ranking guy who's like a prodigy, and he's just really good at his job, and you're kind of like there because you're his best friend, and you're bad at your job. So you're kind of also in training, and you're shadowing him, from what I remember. And somewhere along the lines of the game, he becomes the enemy of the game. And it was such a mind-blowing thing for me in the game because I really liked this character, and now I have to kill this character.
Oh, gotcha.
And that was where like the story was like the first thing where I was like, oh my gosh, the story actually is affecting my gameplay.
Yeah.
And the combat in the game was so unique. It was one of those mind-blowing things where I didn't realize games could do this, or I've never played a game like this.
Is this an SRPG?
What's the SRPG?
Like grid-based combat?
No, it's not grid-based. It's got free movement. Like you've got movement, and I can't remember specifically if movement takes away from your attacking or what. You can move and attack on the same turn, but I don't remember if moving restricts your attacks.
Is this a game where you see enemies in the world, right? Before
Yeah,
you
you'll
attack
see,
them?
and they don't respawn. They do, but then that's an entirely different mechanic of the game.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm thinking of the right game. Do you drop food in this game
Yeah.
to attract? Okay.
Yeah, you have items in the game. I guess you call them consumables. So it's like you don't consume them, but you drop them in the world, and the monsters interact with those items. So you can lure food, because when you're moving around the world outside of combat, you can attack, but all that attack does is give you initiative in the combat. So if you successfully hit the enemy before they hit you, you go first. And that's a huge thing with the traps. And also you can let food down, and you can let mines down, traps, to give you another advantage when the combat happens. Or you can just remove enemies from the map before the fight even starts, and you still get the experience. You just never had to do a combat phase with them.
That's
That is
interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. It's cool.
It's always like old school games, like it's PS2, right? Like
Yeah,
PS2
old
is
school
Capcom
JRPGs.
game.
Like I feel like we're not nearly as homogenized in the
Yeah.
way that they often feel like now. Not always, but like they're like a lot of what you're saying sounds similar to Grandia 2, which was a game that almost made it on my list.
I love that game.
Except I can always go back to it because it's a great.
It is
I
a great game.
actually sat down to play it, and I was like, "This can't be on the list. It's so good."
Yeah.
but it's just different enough. Like every time you start to describe something, like oh nope, that's kind of a left turn from Grandia 2.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like they were more willing to
I've
take
never played
risks with systems and stuff like
Yeah.
that, like accumulating XP that you can then invest in characters, but combined with like a real-time combat system that also had all these like tools for manipulating the combat beforehand. Like, I don't know of any other game that combines those elements in that way.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that's really interesting is it's like Tactics Advanced and Triangle Strategy, where each of your characters has a different role, but they're stuck with that role. Your main character Rai uses a sword, and he's got dragon powers like any other Dragon Breath of Fire game. And Yuna, I think, is the healer's name. And
That's definitely her name in Final Fantasy X.
then I'm probably wrong. I can't remember the girl's name. I want to say it starts with an L, like Lulu or something like that. I'd have to look it up.
I'll
But
call her Lydia.
she
But
uses
go ahead.
guns, and she gets different guns that operate in different ways, and you can have like elemental guns, just like you can elemental swords. But the healer can actually lay traps down, which is really cool in combat. They're in combat traps. So you can lay these big traps, and you can lure enemies through hallways, and you can funnel enemies. And that was so much fun for me as a kid to place these giant traps, and like I would use the gun person to lure enemies through a hall, and have my sword person behind the door right next to the trap, so the trap would go off, and then my melee unit would move in and clean up the kill. And as a kid, I'm doing these things, and it was just so satisfying for me to pull these strategies off. But it was like the FPS Bad Company 2 you're talking about, where everyone plays a specific role, but I don't have to have communication with my friends. I'm all three of my
I
friends.
don't need sweaty friends.
Yeah, I have my other two friends.
The gang's all
Yeah.
here.
And actually,
I got plenty of friends. I can name 3 right off the bat. The gang's all here.
I actually did play a multiplayer with a friend where we just passed the controller between the two of
Oh,
us.
okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because we just both loved
Classic
the game
days
so
there.
much.
Yeah, classic, yeah.
And the game has a couple of interesting mechanics that I don't know if I want to dive into specifically, but there is a way to, like, once you understand this mechanic of the game, there is a way to reset the world. And when I was a kid, I didn't quite understand it. But as an adult, when I went back and played it, I was like, oh, I can farm and level up as much as I want, and that makes this game way easier.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was like, how do I do this? This is so difficult. But I eventually beat the game as a kid, not understanding and taking advantage of the full mechanics of it.
That's been better.
There's a mechanic in the game where if you use certain moves in a certain order, it does a combo move. So, and I remember to this day, I would do this one combo move and Riley would go, Hickson! And it was so cool every time. It would make this big X across the screen.
Yeah.
And then you appeared behind the enemy. You were just in front of them.
cool.
And then they would like burst and blood would go everywhere. And
Awesome.
No,
How you just remember
personal kid.
very
Yeah.
specific things
Yeah.
about a
100%.
game. That's
you have
really
those
cool.
like vivid flashes of That's while we're still trading these references back and forth. A key component of Grandia 2 that made it so interesting to me was when you hit an enemy, they start to get lifted up in the air. And if you can time your different team members' attacks to where they keep triggering, because you say what you want them to do, and then they have to move close enough to do it.
Yeah.
So if you time it to where they all can get there at the exact right time, they'll just keep getting higher up in the air, and it multiplies the XP that you get. So there's like a meta
Talk about
game.
satisfying.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
The whole meta game of seeing how high in the air, even weak enemies, you're just like, no, don't die yet. Don't die yet. Like, it's so
So,
satisfying.
here's something super random about Grandia 2.
Please.
But it's very spoilery. But at the very end of the game, the two main characters actually share a kiss with one another.
Is that true?
I don't know. Do you not remember that in Grandia 2?
We mentioned this in
Oh, gosh,
passing
here we go.
before we started the podcast.
You
So
never finished it.
we were like, should we share stories about like times we didn't save? And one of the things, this was not a case of me not saving. I had a memory card with many valuable saves on it.
I could see that.
Over 90 hours in the first Disgaea.
Yeah.
I was at the final boss of Grandia 2, which is, I was there. That was where I was saved.
Oh, okay.
And Sony, for the holidays that year, sent out a demo disc to try all the new fun games.
All right,
And if you
demo
played
discs.
Klonoa 2 on the demo disc, it would reformat your memory card and it would wipe everything. And I lost everything on that memory card. And I said very quietly in my child rage, I'm never playing these games again. And I didn't.
And I did.
And I didn't. I bought Disgaea 3 and I said, I'll never see you again, Disgaea 1. Bye.
There you go.
And I never got to finish Grandia 2.
Yeah.
But I do have it on Steam and I think my Switch.
Yeah, that's right. Is there any way to play this game currently? Have you tried to go back and play this game?
Why can't you re-experience it?
I bought this game.
Is it expensive?
$20 for a brand new copy. I
Oh,
bought it on. That
baby,
was a
give
few
me
years
one.
ago, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And it was such a strange
PS2
feeling.
exclusive.
It was such a strange feeling to hold a not a brand new copy, but an unopened copy of a PS2 game and to open it up.
For real.
It was Breath of Fire 2.
That's really wild that it was brand new and $20.
Yeah.
I don't feel like any PS2 RPG is that cheap.
I agree.
But to me, the game's a 10 out of 10. It still holds up. So I'd be interested in you guys playing it and telling me is nostalgia affecting
How do we
me?
play?
But
That's
I have a
it's
PS2
$20.
and I have a
dude.
copy of it.
I have a PS2.
Yeah.
I need to go to my parents to
You
get
can
it, but I
borrow
have
that
it.
PS2.
Cool. Yeah.
So my next game is also a game that I could go back to it and enjoy it just as much, but it was such an overwhelming moment in my life, like it's such an encapsulating experience for me, and really shifted like not just how I think about games, but how I actually think about like art and how stories are told and how you can play with different mediums. And I feel like still to some degree video games are seen as like a leisure thing that do not have a lot of artistic merit, especially by people who don't play them or people just play them casually or whatever. But I've always, in a kind of a very pretentious tone, told people that like video games are the culmination of all other art forms. You can read a book, you can watch a movie, you can listen to music. None of those are interactive mediums. They are all one-way experiences in which you are absorbing the experience of someone else.
Right.
Video games take all of those mediums and they put them in a context where you can then give feedback or where you can then at the very least be directed. Even if your input is just as much as moving around the world, you are still being engaged directly to actively participate in what is being told to you. And for me, the game that has played with that idea probably more effectively than anything else for me is the original Nier. That game is so I think the biggest reason, and Nier Automata as well, like I have them side by side. Nier / Nier Automata, because Automata also does some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, when I was playing the original Nier, so for those who don't know, it starts as kind of a post-apocalyptic world where it's just a man and his daughter. Daughter is sick with an incurable disease. Her dad is trying to find a cure for it. Basically, the game starts in like an apocalyptic scenario where basically you are outnumbered 100 to 1 by these like ghostly creatures that are haunting you, and they're the reason the world's been destroyed is the insinuation. And it then flashes to a completely different context where you are in like this village and you're trying to find the cure. There are a lot of really interesting characters. There are a lot of interesting topics that were introduced to me through this game in a way that I still don't feel like other games have really touched on. There's an intersex character where there's a lot of interesting backstory about the way that they are ostracized and the way that they are treated and how that shapes who they are.
I forgot about all that.
I just think and beyond like all of that, every enemy in the game cannot be understood. The whole point is that they speak a different language.
The enemies actually talk, but it's a
and
language.
Throughout the game you will see like this alien language showing up as subtitles.
Why bother showing me these subtitles?
Why bother showing me? Yeah. So then the plot twist for people who haven't played the game, skip ahead like 1 minute. The plot twist is when you beat the game, you find out that there's a lot more complexity to it than this, but you find out that these are basically the result of, if I'm remembering this correctly, a science experiment where humans tried to escape this virus by separating their souls from their bodies. And so these are just humans with no physical form. Mm-hmm. They're not people in any particular capacity. They're not mean or fighting for a cause or anything like that. And you have been destroying them because effectively it's just been passed down from person to person that these are the reason that the world fell apart. This is the reason why everything sucks. Yeah. And when you play through the game again with a new game plus, all those subtitles are translated so that you can now understand what you're doing. And there are still so many amazing opportunities where there's a section where you go into this forest and the whole game turns into a book. It's just text, but the way that they play with perspective and like the way that you're engaging with it, I don't want to spoil too much because I think it's very unique. I don't know that any other game has ever done this. It was like a light bulb moment for me of like, oh my God, you can mix all these different medias together in all these unique ways to really play with someone's perspective of what is happening, of what their role in that is. And I feel like Nier Automata is such an incredible building on that foundation of like understanding where they went wrong with the original Nier, but also bringing so much more. It wasn't more of the same. It was so much more of an exploration. Like it starts bringing in so much more philosophical elements of people and different experiences with different people that are experiencing different aspects of this great disaster that is happening to them and how it's affecting them, but not at all in the way that you might think. Yeah. Like everything about that game is so much more than just a game that even though I could go back to those games and play them right now, I could never have that like tsunami moment where it just clicks and my entire perspective on what art can be and what can it achieve is totally altered. Yeah. So that game is like overwhelmingly a game that I'll never be able to go back to through no fault of its own. Basically.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
How did you? This arm, this creature, it's me. I thought I'd need it only until I found my vengeance. And once that happened, I figured it was all over.
Yes, Kaine and Emil are two of my favorite characters, period.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Cool.
Yeah, it is a great game with an amazing soundtrack, which is one of the things that I think... I mean, the story from that game is already incredible, and the characters are amazing, but I think outside of, like, because the combat's not great. It's just not great.
Yeah.
But I think the music during the combat is kind of what elevates that game to...
Yeah. The voice acting is very good, and I often find... I can't remember the name of the book that's following you around, that's helping you.
The Grimoire.
The Grimoire, yes. Grimoire Weiss is his name.
Vice, yes.
The voice acting really sells those moments, and there's a lot of... I don't remember there being a ton of reused dialogue, which I think is... It's good when a game knows how to be quiet.
Yes.
So maybe I'm misremembering.
Talking to you, Dragon's Dogma.
Francis,
no, if they didn't tell me that they were weak to fire every time.
Weak to fire!
That was such an annoying
in all
thing
of Francis.
But yeah, it's funny that
just mark this off my list.
It's funny. Nier is a game that's like, if you're trying to grade it, like rank it, it's like this section of the game is 8 out of 10. This part, like the way they do this game is 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8, 7 out of 10, and then this section of the game, 2 out of 10.
I'm going to quarantine this one section.
It's funny how like you can make your list, and it's got such a terrible concept of combat. Like, and it's not even like terrible. It's just so outdated.
It's just so
passable.
Yeah. It's passive.
Passable.
Passable is a good word for it.
Yeah.
There's nothing compelling about it.
No.
And it still makes your list because the other elements are just so good.
Yes.
Which you didn't even mention the soundtrack.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I am not typical. It takes a lot for me to listen to a soundtrack. Undertale on repeat. The Japanese symphony did like a whole like a production of the Undertale soundtrack.
I didn't know that.
It's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check out Spider Dance. It's but Nier is already that, right? Like it's already orchestral.
Right.
And it's just so
Which is why it hits hard.
yes, it's very verbose. It's very like
Sorry, man.
no, it's fine. It's fine.
We'll swap
No
next
punches
time.
pulled.
That's
Even the combat, I have like a nostalgic fondness for in Nier. There's very little about Nier that I don't enjoy. I would say.
Yeah.
So
Now, have you?
It's just like there's never any cool moments where I did this cool thing in the combat, and I feel rewarded for it. It's like I finally finished the combat.
yeah, you feel
I
about that
finally
combat
finished
how I feel about all combat,
That's funny.
except Hades.
Yeah.
Oh, Hades.
Nat, did I tell you?
If it's
Natalie,
not on someone's list, it needs to be.
she was like, "Are you going to put that on your list?" I'm like, "That's the opposite of this list. I play Hades for fun all the time."
Yeah,
I was like,
it's-
"There's nothing left for me to do in that game, and I'll just go back just because it
didn't
feels
make my
so
list.
good."
Yeah, 'cause-
Yeah.
yeah, it's just amazing.
Just feels that good.
Yeah.
Spoilers for a future list, maybe, but
That's right.
Talon,
We're at number 2 already.
number 2 already.
We are.
I say already, but
Only 4 hours later.
How are we?
Yeah. Okay. What's your number 2?
number 2, Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild. Didn't think it hit your list.
Yeah, I just that game where we talk about not holding your hand.
I thought hard about putting that game on my list.
And so did I. Exactly. I was also actually trying to figure out where to rank it exactly because I was just like, but just
I think my problem is I just enjoy it so much
yeah.
still.
I
Even
do-
with
I
even
do.
with tears.
I do too. I do too. But I wish I could go back and play it. For
I
the first
couldn't go
time.
back to Breath of the Wild.
After playing Tears.
I agree, but I feel like they're almost inseparable when you're comparing them to anything else.
Yeah.
You have to mention both.
How I feel about Breath of the Wild when I played it is how I felt about Ocarina of Time back then. And it's just like, man, if I could just take, like, everybody's like, want to remake Ocarina of Time? Well, you've got it. It's Breath of the Wild.
It really does.
I feel
Really?
differently than that. I feel like Ocarina of Time has something that Breath of the Wild is
does it?
missing.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think it's almost the direction. I feel like Breath of the Wild is too empty for me, and Ocarina of Time felt so alive.
Yeah.
You would go to new sections of the map, and it was like, this is entirely different.
Right.
And I don't know, Breath of the Wild is like a lot of running around for me.
Yeah.
I
can
get
totally
that, and I think Tears of the Kingdom answers almost all of my complaints in that regard, despite being twice as large because it's underground.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing for me is like,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing one way or the other, but before you get to your actual explanation, I was just going to respond to your statement and say, I definitely see where you're coming from with Ocarina of Time, but with Breath of the Wild, regardless of how I feel about it, that game to me feels like that is what he wanted Ocarina of Time to be.
Yes.
When he made Ocarina of Time, he worked within the constraints that he had to make Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me.
It did feel like Breath of the Wild was his like a passion project.
And whether, I mean, you can argue, obviously, whether or not you feel like that's entirely a good thing that he made the version he wanted, or whether it maybe is a little bit too grandiose for its own good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying I can see an argument for both.
Right.
The weapon degradation is just a huge annoyance to me.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think if they
interesting.
honestly just took that out on entirely, but it's also like, it's like this hard.
That
because it's
removes-
like
yeah.
No,
because,
I actually like the weapon degradation
I
for
think-
real. For
I think
real,
if they-
I think it adds an element of strategy that I would never use any other weapon eventually.
Yeah. I can
and it makes me
see
approach
that.
combat scenarios
That's
totally
differently.
different.
That is true.
I agree. I just wish it wasn't so fast.
That's my
That's
complaint.
yeah.
Yes.
You can slow it
You
down
hit,
by like 30% for sure.
You know, you got a mob of
just-
2 goblins,
Yeah.
and
There is a pace in that game at which you run out of weapons, and then you're just running away from
then you're
enemies.
just running away. Yeah.
Which Tears of the Kingdom fixed that a little bit for me because
It
I
did.
can make a great
Fuse,
weapon.
The fuse is an incredible mechanic, and I wish
Put it in the
was
quick
Breath of the
build,
Wild.
baby. Yeah.
But my biggest thing is that the feeling of discovery in Breath of the Wild doesn't match anything else that I've ever played.
I don't
Really?
remember a game in recent memory, I mean Tears of the Kingdom excluded, where I would be playing Breath of the Wild and like just a scene, just standing somewhere and seeing a vista, I would be like, Natalie, come look at this.
Yeah.
Just because like nothing funny or, unique. I'm not in a combat scenario. I'm just standing in a particular place, and it's just that breathtaking to be like breathtaking of the wild, more like it.
Because I think it's like, obviously you've got the Great Basin, which it's also a big level in itself, but that is the starting area. And, and you get some apples, and you've got a stick, and you run across a few enemies, and you're hitting them with a stick, and you're just like, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? And then obviously it builds up from there, and you get to one spot where there's a ravine, and you just happen to find like a rusted sword, and you cut this tree down, and it falls in between, and you're like, I think I could probably hop on that tree and hop over, and it works. And you're like, wow.
I showed my older brother that specific, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
That specific thing, he's like, oh, that's really cool.
And
I love games that reward curiosity in general.
Exactly, but it feels like something that you could actually do. You know what I mean? And it's like...
I've done it.
Just not with a rusted sword and 3 swings on a tree.
It's just like, if you can think it, you could probably do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Within, obviously, the physics of the game. But it rewards you for attempting to try something, and then when it works, that... sense of like discovery and being rewarded for your work feels way more satisfying than I just pressed A 4 times to do a combo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just does. And it's like, like there's boulders on a hill, there's goblins down there, and you push the boulder down, and it smashes, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that worked. Yeah. Or you light the grass on fire, and it makes an air pocket. You know what I mean?
The first time I realized you could use air currents to lift yourself up with the glider was mind-blowing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, really I want to get over there really quickly, and you shoot an arrow, a fire arrow, kind of far away, and you shoot one up close, and then you can just ride it all the way there. And it's like, that is incredible because it catches fire.
Well, it's not just combat either. Like, if you're at a ravine, and you're like, I have to climb all the way down that, and then all the way back up this wall, and it's raining, and it sucks.
Right.
You can just start a fire, and then carry yourself across.
Yeah.
And then at least you'll land on the other side high enough to climb the rest of the way.
Right.
Because stamina in that game.
Stamina. Yeah, there's definitely some
I was
some
definitely picking stamina over health each
time. 100%.
Because of the exploration.
Yes.
Yeah. Pro tip to anybody who hasn't played Breath of the Wild: there's a statue that let you swap your hearts, that you've upgraded for upgraded stamina, and vice versa. At any point, you can just swap them back and forth. Just go all stamina.
I think it's way off to the northeast.
Yeah, and I didn't know about that until much later, and getting the Master Sword for reasons I don't have to spoil here was much easier because of that.
Go ahead and level up stamina, and then when you want the Master Sword, and swap all your stamina.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah.
So I think what Breath of the Wild really nails though is that obviously the discovery. But I know the map is really large, and I know you said it feels a little empty, which I do agree, but I feel like the plot points on the map are the only things that I feel like it's like almost empty on purpose. And everything that's placed on the map is something that's like worth exploring.
Yeah.
Whereas you have games like Assassin's Creed with huge bustling open worlds, but there's nothing to do. There's just people in the way. You're trying to get to the here's a point.
It feels like they knew it was empty and they were trying to hide it from you.
Yes.
Right.
But they don't know how to do that in a way that matters because now it's just annoying and big and empty.
Yeah.
Like it might feel more full, but if you play the game for any length of time, you just slowly realize
it gets annoying. And then you're just like, I just want to warp there because I don't want to.
The Valhalla one is the one that they made the biggest improvement on the map, but it feels like they've hardly learned from their past mistakes.
I think they're so busy making those games, they don't have time to change anything.
I think Valhalla was the one where they before it came out,
assets.
they said, "Hey, let's stop and actually make a game that works."
I've heard good things about Valhalla. There are a few podcasts I listen to where they play those regularly. But yeah, I'm in the same boat.
I'd like to make an argument against Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think you can do that here. I don't think it's that kind of list.
For me, it's nice to look at, not fun to explore. That's me. It's like I see a tavern, a place to put my horse.
Yeah.
It looks just like that last place where I put my horse.
Yeah.
There's maybe another quest. It's another fetch quest.
Yeah.
Another thing or something. And a lot of the game felt like a chore to me. Let's find all the Korok seeds and
if you're looking for Korok seeds, you'll get what you deserve
as an OCD,
as a final reward.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think I'm OCD, but I do have OCD tendencies when playing games. Like, I want to find all the seeds.
Yeah.
Why did you do this to me?
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I definitely enjoyed the game. It's definitely not a bad game by any standard. But like with Dark Souls, the sense of adventure was way higher than me.
Yeah.
Each area you go to is so iconic.
Yeah.
And like you remember the feeling of when you first went there
Yeah.
to that area. And each door you go through is like, what is behind this door?
Right.
It's going to blow my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Breath of the Wild, it's nice to look at. Not that fun to explore. It's taxing.
Yeah. And I can totally understand that. To me, it worked. Like, you're on a horse in a field.
To me, that game is such a journey over destination.
To me, that game is them
It's like
watching Princess Mononoke over and over and over again and being like, hey, look how that guy runs. I want Link to run like
Shadow
that.
of
There's got to be a way to make this movie into a game.
Yeah, Shadow of Colossus did that for me though, but I was much younger. Where I was like, man, this world's so cool, and I want to explore every inch of it. If I went back to that game,
Right. Yeah.
I'm not exploring
It might be a bit of a cop-out, but I feel like that game is empty in a way that feels very intentional to me.
Correct.
And whether you like that or not is just personal taste, of course. Like not everybody's going to enjoy that, but to me, moving through those spaces, there were moments where I found it frustrating. Rain is really the thing. Like the limitations of that game are very much
Breath of the Wild.
when it impedes your ability to explore is when I'm frustrated. If I don't find anything, that's not frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Because moving through these spaces feels very unique and novel, not in the sense of moving through them, but in the sense that they are all feel like real places that really connect and were formed, not made. You know what I mean? But I thought Breath of the Wild was going to be the best game of this decade. And then granted it was almost a decade later, it's like 6 years. But when Tears came out, I was like, how is this on the Switch? How can you possibly have made this game that works and functions on the Switch?
I say same as game.
So do you feel like Tears is better for you?
Tears of the Kingdom, if I had played both at the same time, it'd be like, okay, put Breath of the Wild away. I'm going to play Tears. But playing Tears after Breath of the Wild, even 6 years after, well, I'd say like probably 4 years after like being done with Breath of the Wild.
Right.
Was like, oh, it's the same map. Oh, there's a whole underground section to explore. Oh wow, this is really
boring and nothing to do.
You're both very wrong about that. I love exploring underground.
The depths.
I genuinely loved like the way in which it impedes your progress is not so active. It is very much like you can explore if you want to, but like we're not gonna like make areas where you just can't get to or just can't climb to, or random rainstorms that mess everything up. But lighting those beacons and having like these big regions just exposed to you, and you're like, that's where I've been just like wandering in the dark, and this was what I like. When it suddenly feels like a real space and you see all these ruins, and it's just so interesting to me.
It just had a lot of those goblin camps scattered around that were copy and pasted.
Especially in the dark when you stumble upon them and you're just not ready for them. I agree, that doesn't feel great.
There were a lot of sections that was unnecessary to go to. There was a lot of things you have to spend a lot of time doing, and the reward is very small.
Correct.
Breath of the Wild, you collect all the seeds. What do you get?
Golden
Some
poop.
ugly thing.
You get golden poop.
So
literally.
in saying that though, when you like say you find like some disfigured rubble on the side of the cliff, you're like, I could probably throw that with a bomb arrow, and so you do, and it like takes you down a path. You're like, oh okay, and then you gotta like glide into it, and then you get rewarded with but
it's like they're trying to teach you it's the journey, not the destination.
It really feels like
but you actually get a reward, and
I'm not saying it's a blue rupee.
Huh?
It's a blue rupee.
Okay,
sometimes it's armor that lets you
armor.
like survive cold easier, or
it could be armor, or it could be
climb
something
further.
cool.
Like,
and I think that's one thing that I think I was disappointed in about Elden Ring is you would finally find something cool, and this happens so many times. It's a flower or a lotus or something that doesn't have
that you
to
could
do with
buy
anything.
at the merchant for like 2 souls or whatever.
And
What
that
runes are they called?
so just for context, I've never really been a Souls person. I like Bloodborne quite a bit, but I've still never even finished it.
Yeah.
Ryan and I have played. Ryan and I have played so much Elden Ring, and that is probably one of the few games that I would actually push through to beat. And never has that been more true in a game. I've never shown up to a gigantic coliseum in the middle of nowhere with no way in, nothing to do, in a game that is designed to make you feel like there's nothing to do when there actually is.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's the opposite. Do you know how long I spent trying to figure out how to get in that stupid coliseum? Just that is like the downside of those types of games, I feel like. It's and
you can now.
That's like the opposite of journey, not destination, right? Like the destination is very important, but the problem is what is at that destination.
What is it?
Sucks. If it's 5 rupees, of course you're going to be like, I lean towards your opinion a little bit in that context of, I wish they had more things like cool armor, even if it just did things that let you goof around, because that game is so much about goofing around.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't have to be like a strict improvement over what you have. It could just be different.
Yeah.
I would love to see more of that. But I feel like Tears of the Kingdom, with the amount of tools that they give you, helps to address a lot of that for me.
It's the most like reused asset game I've ever seen for a sequel. And
I mean, that
agree.
makes sense because it's on a Switch. So I don't know how it
it
functions
just
at
felt
all.
like there was 6 years in between. It felt like a year of work.
I agree. It was to me, it was very disappointing.
Yeah.
Like, I thought we were going to explore a whole new world.
Because every Zelda game has done that.
Yeah.
Every
And I thought
Zelda
we were
game
going to
has been,
explore, and I was revisiting the same villages, rebuying the same armor, re-exploring
That was
the
another
same
huge
things.
complaint.
Yeah,
And
but
I'm just like,
those
dude,
villages have they've been like destroyed or they're
I
being,
know, but
like,
I've already helped them in the last game. I don't want to re-help the same people.
Well, I hate to tell you, but RPGs are going to make you help the same person if it's a sequel. But in the context of like, I felt you're not wrong. I'm not trying to say you're wrong, but in the context of a game like Tears of the Kingdom where it's the same map, I felt like they did a good job of making the differences compelling to me, because I would go to a new location. I would be like, oh, what's going on here? And like the village that you helped to build in Breath of the Wild, which is one of the best quests ever, by the way. You just help build an entire town in the middle of this giant rock that's surrounded by. It was amazing. Because
In Breath of the Wild?
In Breath
And
of the
I
Wild.
thought it was lackluster. I didn't like it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I had fun.
Building that town? I don't know. It was
love
like
that.
And
It's
have
very
you
Dark
built
Cloud.
Have you built a house in Tears of the Kingdom? It's so disappointing.
I don't think I have, actually. I got distracted by Baldur's Gate from Tears. So I haven't gotten as far in Tears as I will eventually. I also haven't gotten as far in Baldur's Gate as I will. But regardless, I feel like we spent too much time like talking trash about your opinion on Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is an amazing game, hands down. I don't know. Like, it definitely has its faults, but for all the negative stuff we've said about it, it is an incredible game.
I'd rather play Link to the Past, though. Okay. I love A Link to the Past. Yeah.
I would not.
I would not
if someone's asking my opinion, I would not.
Its difficulty is right where I want it.
Yeah.
Should we move to my number 2? This game.
Are we going to be surprised, or are we going to be...
I don't think you'll be... Well, Taylor and I don't even know how much knowledge he has on this game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think you've played it.
Is it going to be Honkai Star Rail, or whatever?
Oh, shoot. How'd you know?
That would be amazing. Okay, we're back.
No, we're not.
We're back. I'm padding for time.
Are we still recording?
We're so close to being back. Great. Tell me your number 2.
My number 2 is a game I love, and I haven't gone back to play it because I need someone to hit me in the head hard enough to forget everything about it.